Celebrities are being blocked on social media for not speaking out about the war in Gaza. This is a new wave of boycotting, but why are people doing it? Since the war started in Gaza after the 7th of October terror attacks, activists have been calling for boycotts, divestment and economic sanctions against Israel. But this isn't a new tactic. The BDS movement, a Palestinian-led protest, began in 2005, inspired by the boycott and isolation of apartheid South Africa. The anti-apartheid movement and sanctions helped rid South Africa of apartheid during the 1980s. Supporters say it's an effective, non-violent and peaceful strategy, but its opponents accuse it of unfairly singling out Israel and of being anti-Semitic.
I think that the boycott could be effective, but the way that the BDS movement, the boycott movement of Israel is handling their protests is really not effective, and it's actually harmful for both Israelis and Palestinians and Jewish people around the world.
This so-called BDS rally is nothing but the progeny and legacy of this pure economic warfare against Israel, the Jewish state, simply because people living in Israel are Jewish. It's by definition sort of the essence of anti-Semitism.
How would you respond to the claims that the BDS movement is anti-Semitic?
Reducing all Jews to anything monolithic is very anti-Semitic. Jews are not responsible for Israel's crimes against Palestinians. There's nothing in Judaism that promotes apartheid and genocide and occupation and militarization and settlements. This is not Jewish. Those are Israeli policies. So when we attack Israel on this, when we criticize Israel, when we call for a boycott against Israel, it's against serious violations of Palestinian rights. It has absolutely nothing to do with Judaism, with Jews, or with anti-Jewish racism.
Many students across the US have been demanding universities to cut all financial ties to Israel and divest from companies advancing Israel's military efforts in the Gaza Strip. This pro-Palestinian movement, which started at Columbia University, has now spread to dozens of universities across the country. Hundreds of US students have been arrested, and the situation on campuses has remained tense. What started in the US has spread to British universities. The campaign against anti-Semitism told Sky News that the BDS movement uses tactics of which an overwhelming majority of Jews consider to be intimidatory in UK universities. They said more than 6 in 10 British Jews have either personally experienced or witnessed an anti-Semitic incident since the 7th of October or know someone who has, and a majority of British Jews are afraid to show that they are Jewish.
We don't feel safe. Many things have happened since October the 7th, and that's got much worse. It's intensified quite a lot. The concept of emotional intimidation that we're feeling every single day, but also the idea that we don't know what's going to happen next.
The free speech is about making sure that we can protest for Palestine. We do not in any way incite violence or hatred or anything of the sort. We are here for peace and for justice.
What would you say to the Jews who are joining the protests? And also to the protesters who are saying that this is nothing to do with the eradication of Israel. This is protesting for a permanent ceasefire.
Yeah, I mean, I would be out there protesting with them if they actually called for a ceasefire and for peace. And today we have people around the world, we have students that are calling to continue this war instead of calling for peace, instead of calling for a two-state solution. And I think that if they've done that, if they actually came out and said both Israelis and Palestinians deserve to live in freedom and in dignity and with peace and security, we would have a completely different outcome than we have today.
Isn't that what they're chanting for? Isn't that what they're saying? That they want a permanent ceasefire? They don't want any more arms being sold to Israel?
I haven't heard anyone saying, did you hear any protests saying that Israel and Palestine should live in peace or peace for everyone or anything that? I never heard anyone calling for peace. I never heard that. I heard maybe, ceasefire, but when they're saying ceasefire, they're not calling for Hamas to drop their weapons and release the hostages. They're saying that Israel should stop, right?
This year's Eurovision Song Contest saw calls for Israel to be banned as the war in Gaza raged. Queers for Palestine, a group of more than 450 queer artists, individuals and organisations, called for a boycott of Eurovision, which is backed by the BDS movement. Icelandic and Irish musicians also called for Israel to be banned from taking part. Irish broadcaster RTE had a petition signed by more than 5,000 people setting out similar demands. But the European Broadcasting Union, organisers of the contest, claimed that the event is non-political and is about uniting people.
Protests, controversy, how have you sort of got through that?
I was focused on my goal, on representing us with pride, and nothing around really affected me.
And the top 6 minus 1 were all freedom fighters.
Activists continued with the calls to boycott, giving the example that Russia was disqualified from Eurovision in 2022 after the invasion of Ukraine. Boycott calls started intensifying online in October after McDonald's Israel said on its social media accounts that it had given thousands of free meals to the Israeli Defense Forces. This led to a backlash amongst pro-Palestinian supporters, with critics accusing the company of helping to support the war. Its CEO Chris Kempczinski blamed the backlash on misinformation about the company's position on the conflict, saying McDonald's has seen a significant impact on sales in the Middle East and some outside the region. Similarly, the boycott of coffee giant Starbucks began after the company's union, Starbucks Workers United, published a now deleted post on X in support of Palestine, which prompted Starbucks to file a lawsuit against the union, arguing that their reputation is damaged.
There are bits and pieces from reports by Israeli ministers, by Israeli government officials, admitting, oh, BDS is hurting us so much here and so much there, we need to increase efforts to fight it.
Activists then began creating lists online of other brands they accused of being pro-Israel and the war in Gaza. Boycotts have succeeded in raising awareness about Israel's treatment of Palestinians, and in some cases, such tactics have succeeded. The BDS campaign has in the past persuaded several high-profile companies, perhaps most famously ice cream maker Ben & Jerry's, to stop selling in occupied Palestinian territories. Also, French telecom company Orange ended its business partnership with Israel altogether. Students at Brown University in the US celebrated as they dismantled their encampment after striking a deal with university officials to bring their divestment demands to a vote in October.
Instead of just getting angry or getting frustrated about the hypocrisy, so we tell people, channel your anger and your frustration and your sympathy into effective action to end complicity. If you're part of a trade union, if you're part of an organization, a church, a school, a university, you can do something about it.
According to BDS, all forms of international intervention and peacemaking until now have failed, and so the international community should impose punitive measures such as broad boycotts and divestment initiatives against Israel, like those against South Africa during apartheid. Israel, for its part, along with key allies, maintain that there is no equivalence with apartheid, but protesters say that there is and have pledged to continue their campaign.